Hello, my name is Pastor Collins Days. I'm the pastor of the Second Baptist Church in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I've been pastoring here for 27 years. This is my 40th year in ministry. And I'm grateful to be a part of this conference, the Post-Pandemic Church. And my task today is to talk about dealing with millennials, how to reach millennials in the post-pandemic church. And we know that any of us who are pastoring and been pastoring for any short length of time knows the difficulty of reaching the millennials. And we're really grateful here at Second to have a great cross-section of the membership. We have a lot of millennials that are worshiping with us. And we want to talk about some strategies of how to reach millennials, especially during the post-pandemic church. And I'm not alone today. I'm grateful to have with me Minister Kevin Townsend, who is a millennial. And actually, I have two millennials with us today. And Pastor William Robinson from South Carolina, who will be sharing with us today on the post-pandemic church dealing and reaching millennials. You know, we're talking about the post-pandemic church, and really we're talking post, but we're in the middle of the pandemic. We're getting the second wave of the Delta variant. And so then the church as we know it has been uprooted. And so we've left the normalcy of how we normally do church, operate church, and our evangelism and outreach. And what has been interesting, I think, that the pandemic has done for the church, the black church in particularly, has gotten us out of our comfort zone where we were not able to reach millennials because millennials are very tech savvy, and many of our churches have not utilized the social media, have not used IT and tech in order to reach millennials, which we think that's a tremendous way to reach millennials. All of us have been forced to do that. And so we went from local churches, that every church now, because of the pandemic, is an international church. And it's a time for us to step up our game and use this medium to reach millennials through social media. And so we're grateful today to have with us, as we said earlier, we have two millennials who are going to share with us today. And first of all, we want to address what's the problem with reaching millennials and what has been the problem, particularly the black church, why we've lost so many young people and that age group or in the millennial. We're not even talking about Generation X and Generation Z, but even that particular group that seem to be unchurched when the churches have traditionally had that group of people that now we've missed them. So we're going to ask now we're going to turn these two questions over to our fellow panelists, and we're going to ask Minister Townsend first. And Minister Townsend, who is also a minister here at Second Baptist Church, who's also a dapper dresser, you know. And then after that, we're going to ask Pastor William Robinson to deal with that question as well.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Days, for inviting me into the conversation. And I think it's a great question to ask. What might be the issue that millennials aren't as active in the church today? I think one of the things that's important is that we think about is that the millennial Christian are not like the traditional Christian, if you will. The way we dress, the way we talk, the way we act is totally different than how grandmama and big mama and them used to do it. And so we're saw as being just a little bit different, and sometimes that isn't always accepted. And so I think over the years, we have kind of blotted out or blocked out those from participating in church and or worship because it doesn't look like how it used to look. And we do worship very differently. We're a bit more just a bit more eccentric, if you will. We're a bit more just different in our worship styles. And so I think that's one of the things that keeps millennials from being in church. It's almost as if they have nothing to kind of look forward to. And I think that can be an issue when we don't give them something to look forward to in the church.
Oh, wow. Well, again, thank you, Pastor, so much for having me. Again, my name is William Robinson, Jr., pastor in Aiken, South Carolina at the Hayden Baptist Church. I've been there for the last 4 years. Actually, I celebrate my fourth year this coming Sunday. And so we're grateful to God for the opportunity. I guess because I'm a millennial, I've had the vision, if that's maybe, of the social media method for quite some time. I mean, I've been pushing, the scriptures on the screen for quite some time, starting with my first assignment, to kind of get into that avenue, because I felt like we were headed that way, not for the sake of this pandemic, but just for the sake of the future, and also getting, again, millennials attracted, but also their attention, because again, they can lose their attention span based upon just what they're getting. Again, like Mr. Townsend said earlier, if they don't feel like they're coming and they're looking for something more, if that makes sense. Sometimes, and again, there's nothing wrong with repetitious, but a lot of times, individual can say, oh, I know what pastor going to say, or I know what such and such is going to say. It's constantly a repetition. So I'm not getting anything, quote unquote, to them fresh or new. And so one of the things were to make sure that before this, I've been working on, hey, we're going to get this Facebook page started. We're going to get the group text chat started together. And we've been, working on that for quite some time. It's been a challenge because, again, when you have those that are, seniors or so, that are not used to it, that are not accustomed to it, even with trying to push training and development before that, it's been a struggle. So once we got to this pandemic, I mean, it was a quick, fast thing that we had to do. And so one of the things where we had already had our rolling, our software set up, all of that, those things were in place. But now it was, how can we connect our seniors? Because again, they were asking that seniors, 60 and above or so to stay, or 70 and above to stay home, while others as ourselves were kind of just trusting the faith, and we started doing drive-in worship. So being creative, we did drive-in worship while we were going live. We had individuals to go to our seniors' houses to actually help them, with being able to connect. So with connecting with the millennials has mostly been with our social media platform, building that, but also trying to be relevant and more so speaking their language. It's not more so that the word is still the same. It's not going to change at all. But we can be able to see in the word where we're able to use the word to speak their language in order to be able to speak to them. A lot of our individuals or our millennials, they deal with so many undealt with issues. And so because the church in some cases has been, give it to God and keep it moving and not actually deal with it. And so they want to actually deal with some of those things that they have been battling with, that has probably trickled down from their parents or their grandparents. And so now we're at this point to where we want to deal with the root of the issue and not just pray over it all the time, which again, we got to pray, never stop praying, but let's kind of see if we need to have an in-depth conversation so that we can get to forgiveness, so we can get to.
And I think that church as usual has made it difficult for young people to come together and to just look for something when they're coming to worship. And so I believe it causes us to look for something else where we can feel a part of a family or of a fellowship, or some of us have gone and even maybe started our own fellowships because we felt the push away from those who may be a part of the traditional church and we're not as accepted.
On Sunday morning, I mean, definitely when I have a chance to get them, I try to cover in the message. I try to cover each group as best as I can. So when I'm talking about talking languages, I'm going to say something that Big Mama them can recognize, but I'm also going to say something that the millennials also can recognize. Also, the Generation Z or the Generation X can recognize, so that then I can grasp their attention. If they're dealing with something on TikTok, well, let me hit you with, I know you just saw TikTok, but let me tell you what this TikTok said, what this word says, and grasp them in certain ways. So I think that making sure that we do our best as possible to try to speak their language, in one setting if possible. And that just comes with, I guess, trying to think it through and thinking it out. That it helps us to try to bridge those gaps. Because again, to be honest, we're not that much different. We just have our certain styles, but we're not that much different. I mean, we're thinking the same way. We're having some of the same challenges growing older and growing up. We just, it's not that much different,
I feel like social media does wonders for us, attracting millennials and bringing them in, uses of Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. is something that will definitely attract millennials and bring them in. I feel as though that um, even through different ministries and things, if we can give them a space where they can be themselves, or just not have to fit into a certain mold to come to church. So, for example, you have to talk and walk a certain way, you have to dress a certain way, you have to act a certain way. If we can do something in a way where we don't have to put them in a box, I think that's a way that will definitely get millennials to come through and to want to be a part of the fellowship and ministry. I grew up in church since I was 8 years old. I started at Mount Zion in Pleasantville in youth ministry. My grandmama made us go to church. When she got up, we got up, and we had to participate, learn how to pray, learn how to read the Bible, 23rd Psalm, learn the Lord's Prayer, all those various things. And so I like to see myself as kind of a traditional guy with millennial Christian tendencies, because that's what I was used to. I was used to getting up, going to church, participating, dressing, and so because of that, I believe that there are some things that are okay to kind of expand so that other people feel a part of the fellowship and ministry, but there are some things that I am very much so a traditionalist with, and one of those things would be outwardly just dressing on Sundays, making sure you're in Sunday's best, making sure you have respect for the house and reverence for the God that we are serving, and just making sure you're in church on Sunday mornings.
Discussion has been so far as how to what's the problems of reaching millennials, which all of us face, and we're looking at some strategies in helping empowering churches, and especially when we're dealing with traditional black churches. And I say that because most of our African American churches are traditional, and when I'm saying traditional, we Sunday morning worship, Sunday school, and choirs. And the millennials we're finding that they are not necessarily drawn to the way we do it. And I think you said earlier, Pastor Robinson, that we don't have to change the message, just the method. And I'm one of those older pastors. I'm in, and I'm in that generation now that you guys are going to be taking over my slots, but I want to be useful while I'm here. And for those that are familiar with the ministry at Second Baptist, we are a very holistic ministry, do all kinds of things in the community. We work for the homeless. We have a homeless shelter, a homeless center for the homeless. We do a lot with the youth. Right now, we're hiring 215 youth over the summer. Actually, all year round, we hire youth. And so the young people kind of keep me updated. And one of the challenges that I have is, and I got a great rapport with young people in the community, and we go after the most at-risk kids in the city. But I found that I appreciate them for who they are, but I want them to appreciate me for who I am. I'm not going to learn all their language. I don't even want to learn all their language. I don't want to learn their lingo. I don't want, because it changes too much. Every year I got a group of kids that I'm working with. It's something different. The words that they speak, it just changes. But I found that one of the ways that I can communicate and build relationship with them is out of respect, showing how much I love them and want them to do well, and building that relationship. The kids gravitate. I've got a group of our kids are running from 14 to 18 that we work with, and we don't proselytize because we're really trying to build their character. Our program is called Leaders in Training. But they always surprise me because they're watching us on social media. Now, I'm finding that when they watch on social media, they don't watch the whole service. They got about 5 or 10 minute clip in that message that they pick out or however. And I think even when we start talking about reaching out millennials, we've got to learn. And you talked about attention span. I don't know whether the attention span or not, but in terms of developing the ministry, where we're getting those clips enough to start feeding them, a little bit, and then let the interest peak to expand expand their attention span, that they want to hear more and know more. But they love the one-liners, they love the clips, and they tell me and repeat to me maybe one or two lines. Now, they don't know the rest of the message.
Right.
They pick one or two things out of it, and they clip it themselves and share it with others. And in terms of, we've got to learn in terms of our ministry what it is, and be diverse enough and willing to change a bit. You know, one of the things that happened with us, and you worshiped with us this morning, is that we used to have an hour and a half service, hour 45 minutes, and sometimes the Spirit it might be 2 hours. We do all that we did before in 1 hour,
Right.
1 hour, and we're finding that younger people are coming in because the service is not long. We don't have the announcements, we don't have the long announcements, we don't have all of this, but I still love the traditional. I can't wait till the choir comes back. Hear that gospel, but the power team seems to be, the praise and worship seems to be attractive to that younger generation. And, I was raised on quartet singing and all that, and that just seems to, but we've got to be able to get that balance. So I want to go to the next round of questions in terms of how do we structure the church? How do we structure our ministries? That even, you're in Aiken, South Carolina, and I came out of the South, is how do we deal with that traditional church who have been, we've been stuck or rigid in a particular way for, some of the churches are hundreds of years, 100 years, 50 years, 60, 70 years. And how do we change, how do we change that dynamic? And what are some things, practical things that we can do to reach the millennials, but also maintain, the core of the church, who have always given their time, always given their talents, have always given their treasures to getting the gospel out. And so we want to start with you, Pastor Robinson, and let's kind of discuss that a bit.
I don't think it will be a big task for us to do so, but I think one of the things that we possibly can do with restructure, just like we just said, an hour within worship, and I mean Spirit-filled and all. So again, getting everything that you need, the word, the worship, the prayer, the praise, all of that in. Again, like some would say, millennials say, it don't take all day. That would be some of the terminology. It doesn't take all day. And I think that we probably could. We've seen it with some of our traditional white churches. They have what they call their traditional services. Then they have their contemporary service. Again, we've seen those two dynamics that many ministries do, where they have 8 o'clock services and they have 11 o'clock services. And again, they have different, a different group. It's a different setting and a different type of worship. But I think that there's something that we can do where, again, if people could appreciate, like you said, respect who you are, but also again respect who we are. So I think it's a level of understanding each other and finding a way to appreciate. And again, like you said earlier, I don't have to know all of the terminology, what I'm saying. But if I get at least one, then we good. We good. we can connect. We can then have a conversation. And I think once we continue to focus on those things about how we can restructure with the praise and worship team, still having that traditional. My thing is, you want to be able to have something again that people can really look to come forward to. I love the choir. I love quartet. I love it all. You know what I'm saying? I can do a mix in one setting and do I need thee, oh I need thee, but then also, what I'm saying, I love you forever or something like that. I love it all. It's a good mixture, and I believe that we can do it if we focus on, how we can really get to everyone appreciating what we all are looking for and meeting those needs. One of the other things I wanted to say is when we look at more so with the millennials and the bait. I guess I would say those are like baits, those sound bites, those 1 minute clips, because again, it does something. Like you said, they're continuing to share that. Oh man, I heard this piece right here. It just really got to me. It blessed my spirit. This is what's been holding me down for the last week or last 2 weeks. I want to hear more. So the more we keep, if you got a team that's developing in ministry, if you got a team that's developing that can get those sound bites and actually start pushing it through text message or through Facebook, whatever live, they constantly see that. The more they get it, then the more that's going to want to say, you know what, I'm going over there. I'm gonna go over there one day. I really, this feed, I want more. And so I think if we're giving them just enough to want more, that it can work as long as we continue to focus on, restructuring the things that we can to meet the needs, of all. And that'll help the millennials as well. Because I thank God for my foundation. I thank God for my foundation. My grandmother, was stern with making sure that we knew the Lord, we knew church. I sung. You get up there, you're gonna do the Easter speech. You're gonna do it right. We're gonna practice it right here in the kitchen before you get there. You're gonna do that Easter speech. You're gonna either speak, you're gonna do it right here. Go over it again. So I'm grateful for having that, foundation and having that type of growth. Again, I'm in between. I'm a millennial, but I still got the piece of of people before us. So I think if we do that, we can get to that place to where we can see ministry fulfilled.
So just to piggyback off of what Pastor was saying, I think that when we look at trying to restructure how we do services, I think that millennials want to see people that look like them. And so when you go and we are doing services and things like that, I think it's important that they just see people that look like them. And I believe stuff like that normally attracts others to come and want to be a part of the fellowship and the things that we may be doing. They may see that as, oh, they have people our age doing stuff. Let's go and check it out. Let's go and see what they're doing. Maybe we can do stuff in the service as well. Maybe they'll allow us to, show how we worship the Lord and how we may do ministry a little bit differently. And I think exposure to seeing someone that looks like you really helps with the restructuring of services and things like that. Just like Pastor Robinson said, I am a bit of a traditionalist with millennium Christian tendencies, and so, like he said, you grew up, did your speeches and stuff like that. You learned how to pray. Grandmama made sure you was up. If she was up, you was up. If she went to church on Sunday, you went to church on Sunday. You did Sunday school, Bible study, youth group, all that stuff we had to do. And so I think just being in a place where young people can feel like they can come and that they are appreciated, that they are respected, that knowing that they also respect the way some of us might do stuff. And just, I think it's important that we, however we interact with them, that we are doing it in love and not immediately maybe pushing away. We aren't going to all do things the same way. We're not all going to pray and worship the same way. We're not all going to maybe sing the same way or fellowship the same way. But that does not mean that it is maybe not pleasing to God the way we might do it, as opposed to how one who may be in the traditional church does it. And so I think in our minds, we have to be willing to accept and willing to give the space for them to be able to come in and just be a part and allow them to kind of grow in that. They may not always do it the millennium way, but at least if you give them a space to do that, they may pick up some of the old time religion ways of doing things and they will grow in grace, but we have to give them space to do that. So I think with, maybe changing kind of like the structure of our services, as well as giving young people a space to do that in love and to actually grow, I believe that will help us with the restructuring of that.
One of the things that's very interesting that many churches are really grappling with today is that because of the pandemic, we shut our churches down March of last year. But in January, we put together a plan for the pandemic because we saw this coming, and so we started putting in place online giving, and we start putting in place Facebook, YouTube, satellite radio station, so that we could be prepared. And so now we're 18 months, almost 18 months in, and it looks like we're still going to be during this pandemic for quite some time. And so then the whole face of what church is, the traditional church, and revival meetings and everything else have changed. And so there's a question, really in terms of, I think, feeds into forcing the ministry to the millennials, is that we're going to be virtual forever. Virtual, is not going to change. The question that is confronting us today as church leaders is, what is church going to look like post-pandemic, mid-pandemic? Will you have that group of church members who are never going to come back? They're always going to watch us virtually. It's going to be virtual church and virtual members. And how do we deal with that? Whether that's a good thing. How are they going to come back into the pews, or are they always going to be virtual? What has been very interesting is that our giving has not changed virtually. It's even though there are so many, some of our members have not been here in 18 months, but they are present, virtually. And so it's a great way to minister. One of the things that we're working on now is, we got the podcast and setting up a studio. We've got Second Baptist TV now. We're doing, trying to do various programming to meet various needs of individuals, doing those things online. That not only is it benefiting the church in the, we have been keepers of the aquarium and not fishers of men, that, and not just doing the maintaining the body, but now it's reaching out and putting it out there. That'll be out there forever. There's somebody that wants to touch it, to reach it, no matter where you are, you can get this gospel. One of the interesting things, we do missions around the world, probably in about 13 countries we do missions, and we have not been able to go, but we've been doing a lot of stuff virtually in terms of missions and watching what they're doing. In places like Africa that didn't have internet, didn't have, computers. I'm watching our churches now online. I'm watching them, they're doing it through their cell phones and videos. So even those areas that were hard pressed for IT, they're now even moving in. So I'm watching now, when I'd have to travel 19 hours on a plane and then 3-hour drive and an hour walk into the villages. I'm watching those services, via Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever else. And so it's made everybody's ministry global. And what is interesting, Africa in particular, most of the people in Africa is 30 and below in age, the vast majority. And so, but their churches are full. What is the problem in the U.S. that we're having such a difficult time getting that age group? And we're talking about this. I want to know, briefly, because we want to touch one more area before we leave, is what is it that we can do directly to get our young people and millennials engaged in church, whether it's virtually or whether it's back in the traditional way, be back in the midst of the presence of one another?
That's a great question, Pastor. And I think that one of the things to help that in terms of getting millennials in is to build relationships. Are we building a relationship with youth outside of maybe the four walls of the church? And I think that by building relationships, serving maybe as a mentor, big brother, big sister, helps to kind of bridge that gap and to get one person from maybe being outside of the church to in the church. I think that the same thing with in the technological world, in the virtual space, are we building relationships? Are we keeping up with those that, maybe make comments or things like that maybe saw as millennials? Are we maybe sending emails or, finding some way to just connect with them? I think it's important to establish a connection with them and then watch how those things come together and those things change. I wanted to mention, specifically for me, I can testify that, growing up at Mount Zion Baptist Church in Pleasantville, We always had a pretty large youth group. Our youth pastor then, when I was about 8 years old or so, was Reverend Mary McLaurin. And so as I watched him and grew up, him being my mentor and another father figure, the one thing I saw that always worked with youth, whether churched or unchurched, was to build a relationship with them and to let them know that they are loved, let them know that they are somebody, let them know that they have a bright future, and just to create a safe place for them to come and to be a part of a group and have community amongst other young people who are dealing with some of the same problems, maybe have some of the same issues, dealing with some of the same things. And so that's something I grew up seeing, watching, and tried to take on myself and emulate, and just try to create relationships with them before I deal with the church aspect of it. Because if I can create a relationship and build a friendship, you'll come with me to church. But if maybe I don't do that, you may not want to come. But see, once I got you in the church, you may find something that you saw was really good and you decide to stay.
All right. Yes, sir. I actually concur with Minister Townsend. Definitely finding a way to connect. Now, going back, definitely with the text message, the emails, but going back when the pastor was talking about Africa and how their churches are full now that he's able to see them, and how can we pretty much get to that point here in the States. It's very challenging. I mean, to be honest, if the pandemic, doesn't do it, and what I mean by that, get us to a point to where, we really understand that we need God in spite of what we are so fortunate with. And other people have so much things that they, I guess, have, and they think, some even think that some things are owed to them, so they don't have, the mindset that I really need God. And so I guess asking the Lord, as we continue to pray for that, because we've seen that for quite some time, where some people just feel as if, they don't need Him, or they don't need to be in that space. But to be able to do that now with this pandemic and with the Facebook Live and being able to connect with them, I think that we can draw that. So we have to make sure we draw up a plan, and whatever that plan is, whoever that team is that's able to speak their language. For the Bible does say, it talks about it, how the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Then he says, ask the Lord of the harvest to send workers into that vineyard so they can work the harvest. Those are individuals that know that language, that's able to build those relationships that are relatable to them in order to draw them. So when I send that text message, that's not the the spam, but it's from SBC. Oh, second matter, sure. What Pastor Days? Oh, let me open it up and see, and they get that message, that says, "Hey, we just want to check on you," because again, it's that personal touch, being relatable. Whether it be not on the text message, but if they're commenting in the comment section during the Facebook Live service, and you got someone that's watching that, that's guiding that, and they then click into their message to find that person's name and say, "Hey, we noticed that you've been watching our services. We just wanted to let you know that we are here. To pray for you," or whatever those needs are. But where are you located? Building that relationship. If they're on Instagram, if they're on YouTube, just finding a way to connect with them, to be relatable to them, someone that's focused on that in order to help draw that, so that when they come, you're ready to pour into those that are drawn near. So I think if we make those proper connections, then we probably could grow the church holistically like that.
We're grateful that you shared some time with us for the post-pandemic church and our panel discussion, and hope it's been a benefit and blessing to you. I just want to remind all of our pastors and church leaders who will be watching this, is that the church is still the lighthouse, the sentinel in this dark world. We have what everyone needs. We have the hope of salvation. We have the joy of the Lord. We have the peace. We have everything we need, the power. We have the direction, we have the commandment that God has given. Let's not take that lightly. Let's not shrink from the challenges that we face. We have it, and we need to lift up the strengths that we have. Yes, we've got to do everything we can to empower as many people to come, but we've got it. And let God use us through prayer, through direction of the word, and through fellowships, and through, talking to one another and finding out how to reach millennials, because we have what millennials need. They need peace, they need salvation, they need the joy of the Lord, they need direction. That's what the church has. We've always been the center of our community. We still are the center of our community, and let's never give up hope. God bless you. Thank you for checking in. You got any questions? There's a follow-up portal after this. Just check it out, and we'll get back to you with all the answers. Thank you. Thank all of our panelists for coming to be a part of this.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Reverend Jeff Fauntleroy, and I reside here outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And I want to speak to you today in reference of something that I call the digital church and the importance of having a streaming service for not just your live services, but throughout the week. It's basically what you're starting is a digital church. So let me first talk about the importance of having a streaming service. No longer is the local church a church of just that one community, but we now are part of a global church. We are now part of a global church. We're now part of a global network. We are now every church, no matter what the size of it is, it has a global imprint. You can have a church with 15 people in your sanctuary, but yet when you stream live, you have the ability to preach and teach to millions of people in several locations. And that means not just in your city, not just in your state, but even beyond this country. So it's very important now, especially with COVID. Many churches have been limited, depending on where you live and what area, what region of the United States. Many churches have gone into quarantine, or they've been limited on how many people they can have at their services. So it is important for you to have this streaming service available. I can tell you from firsthand knowledge, where I reside and where I am one of the pastors, we have probably had more than 400 people last year to join our church through a digital stream. They are actual digital members. They go through a spiritual boot camp every quarter to become a member. They know about what we believe and what we teach. We even have ministries that they can join and they can support from afar. So it's very important for you to look at some of the streaming services that are available. Now, there's many, and I'll give you my email address so that if in the future you want to contact me, this is one of the things that I do in my business at J. Fauntleroy and Associates, LLC. We do church consultations where we'll come in and work with you to help you put things together so that you can have a streaming service. And as I'll go into stuff, we'll show you how to have an actual channel for your entire week for your church or your ministry. So one of the things you want to do is you want to look at a streaming service for your Sunday service. It's very important that you get yourself online. I mean, right now, you can utilize Facebook Live. It's important for you to get an HD camera, kind of play around with it for positioning. Make sure you are utilizing a good piece of equipment, a good microphone. I want to say a good piece of equipment that is a microphone and an HD camera. Now, if you're just starting, you don't have to go wild over an HD camera. There's some HD cameras out there that you can get $100, $150 that work well. 1080i, 720i. It gives you great footage, and you just want to position it. You want to play with it a little bit to see where it is you can put it within the church so that you can center it. And as you increase in your digital platform, in your digital presence, you can add different cameras, and you can have a service called Switcher, where you can have your operator switch from camera to camera for different positions. Now, Something I want to let you know that's very important. Play around with it, but before you broadcast live, make sure you get this thing down pat. Okay. It's a lot of churches online now. So a lot of people have a lot of choices. And you want to play with this thing because you don't want for your broadcast one Sunday to look kind of janky. And as that person is going through the internet and they see your church, they log on and they see a janky broadcast, they say, and they go on to the next because they can. It's just a click, matter of seconds. They go on to the next service. And you might have, I'm sure you have a good message, but it's just the quality of the broadcast that people they don't want to put up with junk, and they don't have to. And you don't have to put it on. So, look at it, utilize the young people in your congregation. They're doing their own TikToks. They're doing their own Instagram posts. They're doing their Facebook posts. So they know how to broadcast something. So utilize them. It's a good time to incorporate the young people of your church. What you want to do is you want to look at some of the streaming services that are out there. Most of them are free. Okay. You can't go wrong with YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and you have some programs out there that will consolidate. In other words, as you broadcast, it will stream to the various social media sites simultaneously. And the good thing about that is people can watch whenever they get free. In other words, you don't have to have it. If you work at 11 o'clock and you've got an 11 o'clock service, well, when you get off of work, you can go home and just look at the stream through one of these social media entities, and that person can watch the entire service. So it's good to make sure that your message is a global message, because you will be preaching and teaching to the masses. One of the things you want to think about is not just your Sunday service, but your Life University or your Sunday school. If you've got a Sunday school class for men, a Sunday school class for women, or specific Sunday school classes, you want to think about, and what you should do is you should stream those also. This again gives you an opportunity to teach and preach to the masses. It gives you an opportunity to increase your congregation, the membership in your congregation. You may have people from Cincinnati, Ohio, tuning into somebody in New Jersey. You may have somebody from Dallas, Texas, tuning into a church that comes from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Just imagine how much of an impact you can make if you utilize this service. Now, one of the things you want to think about is you can use some of the social media feeds for your individual Sunday school services. Now, with your certain service on Sunday, along with your individual Sunday school streams, you want to make sure that you have a chat available. And opening that chat with the social media stream, you want to have somebody monitoring that, because you'll always get questions or concerns, or there might be prayer requests, or you might have somebody in a crisis. So if you have ministers in training, deacons in training, it's good to get somebody to monitor that feed, monitor that chat real time. So whoever is at your station, where you have all of your technology set up at the booth, wherever your booth is, whoever's running that, make sure that you have somebody who can monitor the chat stream, because I can tell you that oftentimes If you are streaming this on a social media outlet, you will have people with prayer requests, with emergency requests, with all types of requests. And you want to make sure that you get back to those people in a timely manner. We've had things where people were contemplating suicide, and we were able to get in touch with them and put them in the hands of the authority, notify the authority, and be able to reach out to them by phone, by email, whatever it is you can do to let them know that you hear them. A lot of people want to be they're lonely. You know, we're in a pandemic, and a lot of people have been home. They haven't been working. They've been working from home. They've been cooped up in their homes. Some people quarantined because they tested positive for COVID. They may not have the symptoms, but they have to stay home for 10 days, 20 days, 15 days. Even you people in your hospitals. I mean, think about that. Somebody in a hospital suffering from something, but yet they can see church and get a word. So it's important that we utilize these streams. As I said before, we were able to grow our church tremendously because of this. Now, again, it's important that you have somebody monitoring the stream. And it's just a matter of just watching the broadcast and monitoring the chats. Now, that person may think, well, I want to see the service. Well, they can always go back. If you have somebody at your 8 o'clock service, if you have two services, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever it is, you have one person monitor it, then you have the next person who was at that service monitor, so the other person could actually go to church and attend the service. For your Sunday school, you want to make sure that you have your men, your women, your children, your seniors, however you break it out, whatever specialized classes that you have, you want to utilize one of those methods of Instagram, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, all of those social media sites to stream live on that Sunday. Now, I want to let you in on something else that you can do. You want to think about creating your own little station. That's it, your own little station. vMix, Boxcast, Restream, Vimeo, Facebook Live, all of those are available to upload content so that just imagine this, every day you have the opportunity to have a digital footprint for those who are looking for content in a religious matter. In other words, imagine your church being able to give information about on Monday, let's say at 9 o'clock, you've got someone talking about community issues from 9 to 9:30 or from 9 to 10. You have a host and you have a couple guests. You're talking about community issues. You've got your local sports, your high school sports. You've got somebody talking about what's going on in the sports world. You've got your seniors. You want to talk about things that go on with your seniors. You can record it and you can upload it and people can always watch it. Doesn't have to be live. You want to talk about fitness. You definitely want to talk about some of the health issues that we have right now with COVID-19. You know, everybody has their opinion, pro or con. You can have your doctors on answering questions about the importance of this COVID-19 vaccine that so many people have questions about. Business and finance. You want to increase people's wealth in your congregation. Well, here's an opportunity to do that. You can increase those opportunities by having someone come on and talk about it. You can actually have a channel for all of that information, and you could run it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, you're right back to your church service, your Sunday school, and other informative outlets. So this digital church, the streaming church, is very important if you want to grow the church. I don't see how you can do without it in this particular era. I think it's very important that we put forth this effort. Again, I have seen proof of the increase in church attendance, even in tithing. Tithing has gone up. Donations have gone up for churches that have these streaming services, and opportunity to give using PayPal or whatever it may be. You need to have an outlet for somebody to be able to donate. Just click the donate button and go right to it. Church Teams, Membership Plus, all of that is available. So I just wanted to give you a brief synopsis of some of the things that you can use to increase your church membership, because even if you start with in-service attendance, you still want to have this available for those who may not be able to come to your church, but they want to be a part of your church. They love your pastor. They love your singing. They love what's going on there. Show them what's happening. When you're doing outreach, when you're doing evangelism, take a camera with you and record it and upload it and show what your church is doing. Show the community imprint that it has. Talk about some of the things that go on in your church. Let people know what you do, and they want to become a part of it. So yeah, it's real important to do this. And again, I'll leave you my email. You can hit me up at drjfaunt@gmail.com. That's Dr. J Font, drjfaunt@gmail.com. My website is J Fauntleroy and Associates. J Fauntleroy and Associates. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. You can check us out. If you have any further questions, you want to get in touch with me, you certainly can do that. I'll give you a phone number. You can reach out to me, and we will respond to you with your questions. You can reach me. Hold on, I'll give you the number where you can reach me. 1 second. That number is 770-285-7161. 770-285-7161. Again, if you have any questions, hit me up. But we really want you to make a big imprint in your community and beyond by utilizing some of the opportunities that are available to you through streaming churches, through streaming church, through the Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Vimeo, Boxcast, Restream, vMix. Take a look at it, utilize some of your young people, and you'll see the results instantly. I guarantee you. All right. God bless. Love you. Take care. Peace.
Hello, I am Dr. N. Lamont Newsom, a church revitalist and renewal specialist. It is my pleasure and honor to talk with you today just about that particular subject, the revitalization and renewal of the African American church. Now, if you're not pastoring an African American church, don't leave, don't turn off. This is for you as well. However, we just will be looking at certain things that are especially about the Black church, African American church, that can assist it in renewing and revitalizing itself. So, a little background. I'm a pastor of over 25 years experience, and I'm a former professor of pastoral ministry and Christian education. I'm a church consultant and former chaplain, hospital, hospice, and criminal justice chaplain. So I've had a little bit of experience in a lot of areas of ministry, but none that has been so captivating as that of church development and church revitalization and renewal. I'm part of, let's say, I'm part of the Renovate group out of Orlando, Florida, headed by the visionary leadership of Dr. Tom Chaney, an author of over 25 books regarding church revitalization and renewal. And so, having that partnership allows me certainly to bring information such as this today to you, and information that I know and I pray will be very helpful to you and your ministries in the coming days. So, having said all that, let's get started on why we're here. And we're here to talk about digging old wells, the revitalization and renewal of the African American church. This whole concept of redigging old wells comes from the Bible, Genesis 26:18, where we have the account of Isaac, who's now leading the nation of Israel. And a famine has come upon the land, and Isaac has been told to, don't flee to Egypt, stay in the land of Gerar, and he would be blessed there. And so, wow, think about it. How many times when something happens with us and it's not going the way we want it to go, we want to escape it or find a new situation. But what happens when the Lord says, hang on right where you are, and I can bless you right there. So it tells us God can bless us even in places and at times when we feel less blessable. And so we're thankful for that. And this text kind of lifts that up, that God said, stay there in the land of Gerar. So that's what they did. And picking up that text, it says in 26:18, and Isaac, digged again the wells of water, which they had digged in the days of Abraham, his father. For the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. And, verse 19, Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well of springing water. Verse 20, and the herdsmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, the water is ours. And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. And they digged another well, and strove for that also, and he called the name of it Sitnah. Now in verse 22, and he removed from thence, and digged another well, and for that they strove not, and he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, for now the Lord hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. Well, we have a story, a very vital story here, and you can miss it sometimes in the text. This whole redigging of old wells. Isaac was redigging old wells and was getting water, evidently, and they were striving against him. It just goes to show you that the old wells had value. So the things that we used to do had value then, and they have value now. And secondly, when they were striving against Isaac, he moved away to another area and dug a whole new well, and no one strove against him on that well. Well, that represents what's going to be part 2 of this presentation, that we're talking about digging new wells. We're going to talk about redigging old wells, and then we're going to talk about digging new wells. And so this new well that we're going to be talking about in terms of our text today is the revitalization of the African American church. We're going to talk about revitalization. That's the new well. But before we get there, we're going to talk about those old wells that were very vital to the church before and can be again. So let's begin there. That's our starting point. And so the first thing that the first old well we need to redig is the well of prophetic preaching. That was that moving preaching, that preaching that gave you insight into what was happening, insight that had been shined on by the Word of God and interpreted by the Word of God. It wasn't just out there as an event, but it was given interpretation by the Word of God. And it was that kind of word that we were getting from Dr. Martin Luther King during the social justice movement, civil rights movement, It was that word that was motivating the marchers and the protesters to do what they did, because it was taking what was happening and it was shining the light of the gospel on it and giving interpretation. Somebody once said that that kind of preaching was you preach with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. And so prophetic preaching brought the two together and caused you to understand better what was going on. Than just that was a nice biblical story, and that was an interesting news report. So the whole thing of prophetic preaching, that's the preaching that moved the black church forward, that moved the church to move out into the society and to proclaim justice and proclaim righteousness to be done. That prophetic preaching. And our preaching today has, unfortunately, so much of it is candy preaching for the ear, just to tickle the ear, the Bible says, and it's not stirring the mind or the heart. It's like cotton candy preaching. It occupies your mind at that moment, but after the moment is gone, and it's as if it never happened. That's what cotton candy is. You put it in your mouth, no sooner than you taste the sweetness of it, it's evaporated. But we need the redigging of the old well of prophetic preaching. Secondly, we need to redig the well of social activism. That was the activism that Martin Luther King and others was involved in the 60s. That social activism, that the church had a voice and the church was listened to. Ever since, it became such a thing that when politicians ran for office, they wouldn't dare think about running for office without stopping by, quote, the lead church or churches, and to talk to the pastors and the congregants there and let them know who they were and what they were planning to do. And so I can remember, we just have, politicians falling all over themselves, wanting to get some time before the congregation. And we moved them from standing up in the congregation under the worship service to you can come and meet with the congregation after service. You come to the service, and then after the service, we will provide time and opportunity for you to meet them in the fellowship hall and all of that. And so that's how important it was. And so the church being active and involved, politicians knew that they had to get the check off by the church. If they didn't, their chances were kind of slim. But now politicians just run right by the church; they don't care. That power and that relevancy is not there. But I believe that revitalizing that, redigging that well of social activism to be a voice to be reckoned with by the church will certainly make a difference. And it made a difference because people felt that if they got news anywhere else, they got it at the church, they were getting the right stuff. And so the church became one of the center points for them, or the center point for them. Thirdly, we need to redig the well of community outreach. Now, we have businesses of that today. Certainly in our churches, we have some ministries and some things that outreach the community, but not as many as we should have. We used to have health clubs, health ministries that actually was not just for the church, but for the community. We had social action committees, and those social action committees developed, planned, and implemented outwardly focused outreach activities to the community. I don't know if we're doing much of that today. Some churches are, but many are not. The church has gone inward, and instead of being outward, and that's our problem today. Is a lot of churches are focused on the inner church and not focused outside the church. And so we need to redig that well of community outreach. We need to have those developed ministries that are helpful to our community, that will help lift our communities, and give the community the kind of push that it needs, and that only the church could supply. So besides redigging the wells of community outreach, we need to redig the well of organizational partnerships. Now we have our traditional partnerships, the Boys Club, the Girls Club, and some others. But in this day and time, the redigging of the well of organizational partnerships looks at that there are new organizations out there that we need to partner with, rather than just the traditional organizations. Hear me well. We need to partner with our traditional organizations and to strengthen their partnerships. But we also need to look beyond the traditional and go for those non-traditional organizations that we haven't traditionally partnered with, and to partner with them. And because in this day and time, with gentrification going on in a lot of communities where the African American church is located, you have different organizations moving in, and the church has to learn how to partner with those organizations if it wants to continue to be effective there. So we need to look around for the nouveau, I call it nouveau partnerships. What new organizations can we partner with to help revitalize our churches? Okay, next we need to look at the redig the well of being an agent of healing. Now, one of the things that we've seen very clearly during the pandemic is that churches began to open the doors, become places for testing for the COVID-19 and places to administer the COVID-19 shots. And the last time we saw the church really, I would say, very active and involved in health and healing in our community was with the AIDS crisis. Many churches rallied around to become centers for testing and for information giving for AIDS. One of the churches that I had the honor to pastor in Gainesville, Florida, we were blessed with a doctor, general physician there, and with his leadership, we opened up an office, ministry there, where folks could come to our church and be tested in confidence, and also be treated in confidence. And so we had both things, and we, the church, we continue to inform the church and the community about AIDS and things that they should know. And so the church is a prime area for health ministries and for to be an agent of healing. And we go back in time in the early church in Rome, when there were illnesses and sicknesses, it was the Christians that pulled the sick folk in and helped minister to get them well again. Had opened their doors to the Roman people to help them heal and be renewed. And so the church needs to pick that role up again. And we see it, like I said, we've seen it in the pandemic, where churches have become centers of testing and centers for getting the pandemic shots and shots for COVID. So we need to continue to do that and do that stronger. I think that's very valuable. People will come to the church when they will not go to other places. They may go downtown to the health center or what have you, but they'll come to their neighborhood church because they feel more comfortability in going that way. So this is a well we need to redig as a church. Then there's the well of being outward focused, and I mentioned this earlier that our churches have become inward focused instead of looking outward and looking at how the church can make a difference in the greater community, what the church could do to better the community. It has turned inward. The author Regle, Regle, first name escapes me right now, but he wrote a book, The Death of the Church. And in talking about the death of the church, he talked about the cycle that the church has, that every 20 years, it's either outward focus or inward focus. And I started doing my own research on this, and it bears it out. That is, it does appear like every 20 years, give or take a year, the church was in that focus, outwardly or inwardly. We are right now, this pandemic found us as an inward focused church, concerned with building new cathedrals and building new campuses and things of that nature. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I believe that we sacrifice looking outward, what we could do outwardly, to looking to develop ourselves inwardly, to making ourselves feel good and presenting the worship center be better than anyone else's worship center and all that of that nature. But we became inward focused. We're more concerned, and as a pastor, I can tell you, churches in a heartbeat can become inward focused. They're concerned about the church building. They're concerned about the pews, and they don't want children in this section of the church, and they don't want this to go on in this part of the church, because we did all that hard work to put this in place, and we don't want it destroyed or torn up, or you can't have that particular ministry here because we don't have that kind of space for it. When our sanctuaries and many of our church buildings stay vacant all throughout the week, except for maybe choir rehearsal, prayer meeting, what have you, and then Sunday service. Other times that building can be empty and closed and dark. I had that experience too, coming to a church where the church had great facilities, but it was only open on Sunday. And one of the first things that I sought to do was to move that church from just being a Sunday church to being a 7-day-a-week church. That church was available for community group meetings, available for AAA, and you name it, NA, and we in fact became a place where we were booked almost every week, almost every day of the week. Organizations and groups would come to us because they knew that we were open to the community, and so they would come and seek a space there and find themselves be able to get space and have to pay all kinds of money for it. And so that brought people to the church. Also, they wanted to be part of a church that felt like that operated that way. So we need to be more outward focused, especially today. And there are a lot of causes and issues out there today still to be dealt with. There is certainly never a ceasing of issues or concerns for the church to be involved in. So we need to look at how, Sunday we should come to celebrate what we've been able to do and what God is doing, and to recharge, to go back out on Monday and to make an impact in our communities. So we need to redig the well of being outward focused and not just making it comfortable for us here in the house, but what are we doing to make it comfortable for our brothers and sisters in the community? So let's review then some of the wells that we need to redig. We need to redig the well of prophetic preaching. We need to redig the well of social activism and involvement. We need to redig the well of community outreach. We need to redig the well of organizational partnerships. We need to redig the well of being an agent of healing. And we need to redig the well of being outward focused. Now, those are some of the wells when we talked about Genesis 26. Those are old wells. And there is value in those old wells, because if there were no value in old wells, Isaac and his people would not have been in contention with the people of Gerar if those wells did not have some value. So they had value, and so they contended for them. But also, when they saw that they were going to continue to get contention, they set out and they dug a totally new well. And well, for us folks, this totally new well is church revitalization and renewal. Now, so far, the things that I've said in redigging, a lot of those things had direct reference to the African American church history and the things that the African American church did in past times and historically to bring it to the prominence that it enjoys. But revitalization is for everybody. And we're going to be looking at some of the principles of revitalization and some of the things that we do, all churches can do. So let's talk about revitalization. Revitalization is not tearing up and throwing out everything. It's not total reconstruction. A revitalization is looking at where we are, what we have, and what we're doing, and how we can do it better, and how we can be more effective. You and I well know television. Many of you may remember This Old House was one of the first programs on house renewal and renovation, and I think it started in Massachusetts and in New England. And they took this old house and they renovated it and turned it into something totally new. New rooms, new things, new spaces in the house that had not been there before. New systems that were being utilized. And so the renovation, they took an old house and made it look like new. But the house had good bones about it. Good bones, good structure, and so they used what the house, the good bones and good structure, and they built upon that, taking away some of the stuff that no longer was effective or no longer popular or no longer really used or utilized by folk, and made it into something new. Renovation of the church is the same thing. The church, we're looking at the bones of the church, and we're saying we're not going to destroy the very bones of the church or fabric of the church, no way. But we're going to look at what can be done with the church to revitalize it. You know, a church has a growth cycle. You know, it starts out and it's on fire to doing the ministry, and it grows, and then after a while it hits a point where it stagnates. And nothing much is happening. They're just maintaining what has been. And brothers and sisters, a lot of churches are in that point right now, just maintaining. Out of the 350,000 churches in our nation today, it is well as calculated that over 85% of those churches are in a state of stagnation, decline, and even dying. And the fact of the matter is that you know, just because the doors are open, the choir is singing, and the deacons are there, and the children are there, doesn't mean that that church is vital. If you want to know if your church is vital, a little quick exercise you can do is take a survey of people within maybe a mile and a half radius of your church, and where your church is located, and ask some questions of those folks. If they even, first of all, know your church, know the name of your church, and know what the church stands for and what it does, or where it is. Do you know what St. Joseph? Do you know what church is St. Joseph's Church? Someone say, "Oh, might say, yeah, that church down the street." And so others may say, "I don't know. It might be that church down the street," but it's an eye-opening situation when you go forth to find out what people really think about your church. I have a question for you. What would happen if your church closed today? Who would miss you? Would you be missed? Would anybody miss you if you just close your doors today, shuttered everything, put a for sale sign up there? Would you be missed? Think about it. Just think about it. So in church revitalization, we're talking about how we can take what's already, you already have some good ministries going and things that are happening in the church, but how can we make the church more vital today than it has been? We're just stuck in that stagnation stage, and we're just going along, doing what we've been doing, long as we have the doors opening and people coming in and the choir singing, we're happy, we're okay? Or are we really vital? Are we really a vital institution in that community as we once were? And so, as we look at renovation, it's that new well that they dug, that new well. They went out and they dug a new well. And that new well was a blessing to the nation. And through it, God blessed them and helped bring forth that old covenant relationship with Abraham that he said, I will make you a people of many nations. And I was going to grow you and develop you and all that he had promised to do. Now it seemed like it was going to start to happen again. So as we look at revitalization, there's some things we need to consider in revitalization. Like I said, it's not knocking everything down and starting all new. It's looking at what you have and how you can do it better, what you don't have, and what you need to do that will make the church more vital. So in this process, and it's not an overnight thing. Revitalization and renewal of the church is not an overnight thing. Let me stress that. It doesn't happen overnight. It does not happen in 3 weeks. It does not happen in 3 months. But it may happen in 3 years. Because there's a process that you go through. Now, let me just also say that even as you begin this process, even though the process itself may not be clearly shown, or the results of it, but you will see victories. Oh, you will see some things start to change and some things start to happen as you go through this process. And so one of the things that in looking at church revitalization renewal is to, first of all, you need to take some assessments, such as where you are. Where are we located? What's our role here? Or what could it be? What's the resources we have or don't have? What needs are here that we can meet? Visioning is very much a key piece of this. Because what does vision do? Vision says we want to be in 5 years down the road. We want to be at that position. We want to be look like this in 5 years. We want to be seeing growth. We want to see more people coming in, and we want a church of vitality that's on fire for the Lord. Well, how are you going to get there? You have to have a process. And then vision lays down that process. It says, these are the things that we can do that will help revitalize and renew our churches. So visioning is where you want to go and how you want to get there is very, very important. Many churches don't do that. Now, they may have a vision statement and it's like a mission statement, like the mission statement. Every church has a mission statement, but many of them, the mission statement is under layers of dust. If you were to ask members in the church, in our churches, what is the mission of this church? Many would not be able to tell you. If you would ask, what is the vision of the church? Some will be able to say, we have a vision, but many would not be able to tell you what that vision is. And so vision says, okay, mission is what every church has. The same mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ. Everybody has that mission. The vision is how you see that mission being done. And what the church is to do in order to bring that vision to reality. So many do not know their vision. The church that my wife and I attend now, presently every Sunday, we recite the vision statement of that church in terms of our stewardship and of that church. We recite that so everybody from the youngest to the oldest know what that church is about and what we're geared to do. So there are things that must be done, like taking assessments, as I said, community assessment, ministry assessment, leadership assessment, congregational assessment, and overall church functioning assessment. How are we functioning? What are we designed to do? You can have a community where you have 5 churches on the same street, but every church is different. And believe it or not, every church has a different mission, ministry, vision for itself. They all have the same mission, but a different vision. And so just because the church across the street or down the street from you has one thing, that doesn't have to be your reality. Every church has its own reality. So to find that reality and to seek out that reality is a very important piece for each church. So church revitalization is what comes about. Church revitalization brings all this together. We've had other movements in talking about development of church, such as the healthy church movement. We had that movement talking about the church being a healthy church. We had the movement talking about the vision and the vision of the church. We've had other movements that have been focusing on making the church better. But no movement has been as comprehensive as church revitalization and renewal. All those things that we've done in the past, one you could say are all scooped up into church revitalization and renewal. Everything that has come, the purpose-driven church, Rick Warren, all of that, those things are all now part of the toolkit of church revitalization and renewal. Revitalization and renewal is a toolkit, can be seen as a toolkit, and all those movements that have come before are tools. I wrote a book, a paper rather, when I finished grad school at Drew University, and it was about vision as a tool to revitalization and renewal of the local church. It was just a tool. And vision is a tool, just as healthy church is a tool, just as purpose-driven church is a tool. Those things are all tools that really you will use in revitalization and renewal. Makes up the toolkit. So that's what revitalization and renewal is in a summary way. Certainly, we won't have time to go through step by step of church revitalization renewal. Like I said, it's a 3-year program, and you need to be prepared to go 3 years. But again, in those 3 years period of time, you will see victories. You will see changes. You will even see growth. Growth is not the ultimate product or outcome, but it is a byproduct of church revitalization and renewal. Let me say that again. Growth, more members, and all of that is a byproduct of revitalization. It is not the main goal of revitalization. The main goal of revitalization is to make the church an effective church for the spreading of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's its goal. But church growth and development of church, that is the byproduct. Yes, you will see new people come. New ministries will develop through this process. And what we probably need is just spend time on church revitalization, going through the various steps and aspects of church revitalization. Two of the things, I've just given you kind of oversight, the assessments. If you don't know where you're going and what you have to go with, you don't know what you're doing. You need to have a clear design as to where you're going. Do you have what it takes to get there? And if you don't, what do you need to do to get those things so that you can get to where you're going? So church revitalization is sums up everything that we've talked about in church in church development thus far. And that's a whole separate section. This time together was really to give you a feel for some things that could be done, redone, that the church did previously that helped it become a focus point for the community. Secondly, the new things that the church can do to help it grow and become the focal point. And that is certainly revitalization. So what I want to give you before we close is just along with revitalization, there are some other things that we can do that can help renew and grow our churches. Starting out with that, this is the pandemic has really brought forth and highlighted these things, and that's technology. Dig the well of technology. Technology is the thing today. The pandemic has caused churches to be virtual. People attend virtually, they give virtually, they study virtually. They do all the things that they were doing in person, they're doing virtually. So a lot of technology the churches had not used previously is now being employed. If you're going to be able to be the church today, you have to be technical fluent. If you're not, you won't have the effect. You may even find yourselves having to close your doors. If nobody can hear you, see you, they're going somewhere else. And so, a number of churches now, you can tune them in on Sunday morning. You can get their Bible studies. And churches are pushing now the technology thing to find out how other ways, churches are even hiring, want to call virtual pastors. That's going to be really looking at how to improve the virtual church. It'll be a virtual church pastor. How can we make sure that the people that are tuning in to us on Sunday and Wednesdays when we have Bible study also can feel more connected with the church at other times? How can they be part of the planning team? How can they be part of this ministry and that ministry? And then whatever materials that the church in person is receiving, the church virtually is to receive. How do you keep them connected? So the pandemic has really fired up this whole area of technology, and it's a big piece today. And churches are constantly looking at how, and offerings are out there now as to how churches can be more effective in this whole process. So the well of technology and the well of virtual ministry. Churches that before didn't want to have, weren't virtual, are now going virtual. Like I said, if they're going to even continue to exist. Then we have to dig the well of multiculturalism. Especially for those African American churches located in areas of ongoing gentrification. We're finding today a lot of churches, African American churches, are in areas where gentrification is taking place. And so these churches, one of the techniques that they may want to look at is how to become a multicultural church. Not just a church with different culture groups in it, but to truly become a multicultural church. That certainly will help grow the church. How are you going to reach out to the people now that are populating communities that once were occupied by African Americans are now not being occupied by African Americans, but being occupied by Chinese, being occupied by Hispanics, being occupied by our white brothers and sisters, and so the churches in those areas find themselves with choices to make, such as either they're going to stay there, and what does that mean? Either they're going to sell their property and move out, or they're going to combine with another church. And so to become a multicultural church is also a possibility as we look forward. And then we need to look at digging the well of going back into the building business. We have a lot of churches that have land banks, that have banked church, have banked land, and it's just sitting there. We know that because of this pandemic, it's shown that there's not enough affordable housing around. And that land can be used to build affordable housing in those communities. So that's something to look up as well. The multiculturalism, and to look at the affordable housing, and also digging the well of repurposing of church buildings and properties. As I stated earlier, buildings and properties many times stay open, stay empty all week long and not being utilized. We can repurpose those fellowship halls to be used for other things during the week. And then lastly, dig the wall of the well of mixed use properties. How can church coexist with other organizations? How can the church and other organizations come together and to be in a position of coexistence where one is helping the other? So those are just briefly some things that we need to look at in terms of digging new wells. However, the main new well to be dug is that of revitalization and renewal. So we hope that this has been informative to you and helpful to you. And certainly I can be reached. My email is Newsom Norton, the number 2, Gmail at the number 2 at gmail.com. That's Newsom Norton 2 at gmail.com. If you have any questions or would like to have further discussion concerning this, please don't hesitate to email me, and I'll be happy to respond to you and to explore with you whatever your concern is. It's been great to be with you in this time. I hope that this time you've been able to get a little taste of what the church can do to revitalize and renew itself. May God bless you and keep you all. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Greetings. My name is Calvin Daniels. I am the current pastor of the New Hopewell Missionary Baptist Church, located in Darlington, South Carolina. We have been honored to be able to be called pastor of that great church for the last 37 years. 37 years of gained experience and seeing God work in a very mighty, mighty way. This pandemic has certainly have created, to say the least, many challenges and have really put a strain on many of our sisters and brothers who have been called, is called during this pandemic to lead the church, the body of Christ here on earth in an effective way. We want to give thanks to this amazing group of pastors and ministers who thought it not robbery to take part, to join in this conversation, which is our prayer will be a benefit and a blessing to many of you, our sisters and brothers, who, as spiritual leaders within the community, is called upon now to give leadership during these very uncertain times. And we pray that the body of Christ will be able to endure this moment and come out stronger than when it went in. There's a series of issues that this group has been called to investigate and, to the best of our ability, give some sense of clarity as to where we are as the church and where we believe that God is attempting to lead the church during these very perilous times. I have been tasked with the challenge of what the current church, as well as the post-pandemic church, should look like, will look like, must look like now and in the post-pandemic era. What will the outreach of the Black church in particular, and my focus will be somewhat on the rural church, the rural Black church outreach now and during the post-pandemic era. So this presentation will focus on the spiritual attribute of the love of God. The love of God reaching out into the community to minister to the needs of his created order. Now and post-pandemically, that's the focus. God, the love of God, reaching out into the community and ministering to the needs within his created order. We will focus on the extent to which God will go and has gone to reveal himself to mankind. God has gone to great length, continues to go to great length, even in the midst of this pandemic, to reveal himself to his created order. As we examine the timeline of this pandemic, the Black church is and will be met with many challenges as it relates to the communities in which the Black church exists. We're going to look at before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and again, what we are perceiving that the post-pandemic Black church will encounter and must be about if we are going to do effective ministry. Before the pandemic, there were those in the community, in the Black community, that questioned the relevancy of the Black church. Is it still pertinent in today's environment? Is there a need? That was the question before the pandemic. Is there a need? Is the Black church necessary? Is it still necessary? We have made some great gains as a people, as a culture, as a nation. And does those gains now lend itself to the diminishing of the relevancy of the Black church? That was before. And I submit to you, my sisters and brothers, that such an attitude could very well be brought on by the fact, can't avoid the facts as many in the culture, larger cultures attempting to do, but the facts are that many of our Black churches have become so self-centered with their own interests until they were not able to focus on ministering to the broader community. That's just a fact. Then there is during the pandemic, where in many cases, due to the high infection rate of the virus in the Black community, the Black church, as well as many other churches, were forced to close their doors, our doors, in order to protect our congregations, in order to protect our communities. As of the time of this presentation, many of our churches have yet to reopen. That's during the pandemic. And then there is beyond the pandemic, which is currently very, very uncertain. There is a void of knowledge as it relates to this beyond the pandemic era. And now with these new and more contagious variants and the alarming hesitancy of many in the Black community and white communities to get the vaccine, which again puts many more at risk. The question that arrests the attention of Black leaders, church leaders, spiritual leaders, is what's next? What's next for the church? The Black church in particular, the rural Black church, where before the pandemic, the numbers were dwindling. Many folk who were half coming would not be returning. So what's next? Where does the Black church go from here? I submit that there is no concrete answer that would satisfy sufficiently the many mindsets currently pondering and seeking to answer such questions. To give some sense of hope to the what next question, I submit to you what was submitted earlier in our opening statement relative to the love of God. The love of God, reaching out, revealing himself in love, God reaching out, revealing himself to mankind to reclaim the relevancy that has been lost, be it perceived or real. The Black church must reimagine herself. The Black church must reposition herself as the earthly means of reaching into our communities with the love of God and the compassion of God. And it has to be demonstrated in a practical sense. A practical sense. Christianity is a practical religion. It's not what we say, it's what we do. Spiritually speaking, John 3:3 must be received anew post-pandemically. Let's not miss this now. John 3:3 must be received anew post-pandemically. In John 3:3, Jesus declares, I tell you the truth. Jesus is the truth. Jesus says, no one can see the kingdom of God unless she has been born again. Spiritually speaking, I submit that the new church, the post-pandemic church, must be born again. There will have to be a rebirth of what will be the post-pandemic church, a rebirth. For the Black church to have a positive impact as the representative, being the representative of the kingdom of God on earth, it will require her to employ spiritual vision. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Again, before the pandemic, many churches were suffering, numbers dwindling. During the pandemic, we have lost a lot of our members, some more than others. Numbers have dwindled. Post-pandemic, the trend, the research, and some of our brothers will allude to this, the brick and mortar church will see smaller numbers. Smaller numbers. So the post-pandemic church, and even now, there will have to be the employing of spiritual vision. The leadership, pastors, ministers, spiritual leaders of the Black church must use what I'm going to term the telescopic means of faith to see what's next as it relates to community outreach. It's going to be a movement of faith, understanding that during this pandemic, the future is invisible, hidden from physical view. The future is invisible. I'm convinced that during and beyond this pandemic, God has and will bring glory and recognition to his holy name. I am convinced. I'm convinced that God is going to do it. It will depend solely upon the Black church as to whether it will play a part in that glory. The premise of being a part of that glory will depend upon the willingness of God's people to give God something to work with and then be able to watch God work. Don't miss that. Being a part of what God is going to do post-pandemically and what he's doing now will depend upon the willingness. And when I say willingness, I'm speaking primarily of the sacrifices, the due diligence, the hard work that it's going to take to make the Black church relevant again. Again, spiritually speaking, according to Matthew's gospel, Matthew's narrative, Jesus coming in the flesh was to usher in the dawn of God's kingdom, the dawn of a new day here on earth. And in order to do that, Jesus had to destroy some traditional methods of the culture. Don't miss that. According to Matthew's gospel, Jesus' appearance was the dawn, the beginning of a new day, ushering in the kingdom of God here on earth. And in order to do it, he had to destroy, demolish some traditional cultural methods in order to establish God's kingdom. The same will apply post-pandemically. Jesus made it crystal clear that it is not feasible to put new wine in old wineskins. Made it crystal clear. The spiritual implication here is the new that God is going to infuse into his kingdom on earth is too potent and so much better than those old ideologies, those old traditions. The old will not be able to comprehend, will not be able to fully understand the newness. That's why, again, I say there must be a willingness on the part of God's people, and especially among the leadership, to be open to radical change. The reintroduction of Jesus into the life of the church, in a practical sense, is far better than what the church had gravitated to. Far better. Far better. It is, again, my belief that the post-pandemic church must be, as Jesus was, community-based, focusing on the development of the entire community versus being the self-only entity which the church has become. The new church, the new order church, the new arrangement of church must engage itself in the diversity that is within the community in which the church is planted and beyond. The new church must engage itself in the diverse community in which it has been planted and beyond. I say beyond because with the use now of technology, it is highly, highly possible that the ministry of the local church can have positive impact beyond its local self, beyond its brick and mortar. What is effective, and again, especially in the rural areas of our communities, what is effective in one locale can be just as effective in another. Keep in mind that the ministry of the kingdom of God on earth is no longer confined to a street address. If your church during this pandemic has been located only at your address, your mailing address, and you have not done ministry in the last year and a half, I doubt, personally speaking, whether there's a whole lot to come back to. Like God, the body of believers on earth is now omnipresent. Remember, the future is invisible and must be viewed through the telescopic lenses of faith. No one other than God can currently see what is beyond what is. So we must trust him. That's what faith is. We must have faith in him now for divine revelation of what is yet to come. As leaders, as spiritual leaders, as pastors, as ministers, evangelists, apostles, bishops, whatever you're not, whatever your title is, the challenge is the same. We are challenged to read the signs of the time, which technology will play a big part of the future church. The church must engage our communities in various ways and means, allowing technology to be the means of communication. During the pandemic, many of our churches have thrived. Many of our churches have even increased in numbers, financially, spiritually, through the means of technology. And yet there are many of our churches who have not embraced technology. Keep it in mind, God reaching out into his created order in order to reveal himself. By reaching out will be through the body of believers who are willing to be used in this process by whatever means necessary. The challenge is and will be how. How do we do it? Regarding the how, we know that prior to the pandemic, there was already a dwindling, a drop, if you will, in the participation of the community in many of our churches. We're in communities, but communities are not in us. This drop in church attendance has been exacerbated by the means of technology, and more people will use their technology as the means of worship versus brick and mortar experiences. Right now, many are not coming to church because of the pandemic, but they're still worshiping God in the confines and the comfort of their homes. What's missing is, the fellowship. And we are very familiar with, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves. We know it. But the reality is, there are those who are not showing up. And again, the church had become so self-centered until many ask, what's the use? It is my belief that all spiritual outreach, especially in our rural communities, will have to be community oriented. What will that look like? The focus of the efforts must engage the community. It must employ the community, and it must empower the community in which the church exists. Yeah. That's the new church. Engage, employ, empower. If we are going to regain the relevancy of being God representative on earth. From the introduction of community gardening, introduction of disaster relief, providing after-school programs, addiction recovery programs, financial literacy, political action teams, and a myriad of other initiatives. The Black church must address the needs within the community. To be in a community and disconnected from all of those needs makes the church irrelevant. The Black church outreach must provide stability and hope for those most adversely affected by this pandemic. If the Black church is going to regain and reclaim its relevancy in the community, it is imperative that once again, the Black church must become the prevailing force in the community, not in theory, but in practice. A couple of ideas that I believe will be helpful in outreach as it relates to current and post-pandemic church. I suggest that we develop, the church, a plan of new radical ideas that addresses the needs of the community. How about putting our young people to work through developing youth entrepreneurship programs where we are teaching our young people how to operate businesses? I mentioned community garden, teaching them self-sufficiency through raising produce, selling it. Nothing wrong with that. You buy it at the grocery store. Why not teach our young people? Set up a vegetable stand at the church. Let them raise the vegetables. You teach them. They sell it. Keep records. Teach them all of the ins and outs of operating successfully a business. And then as leaders, we have to encourage our people to support ourselves. What we're doing is making the Black church relevant again. There has to be some radical ideas, things that you would normally think about. One of our team members here young people just opened an ice cream stand. Ice cream. Kids love ice cream. Take them out for a cone of ice cream. Buy it from yourself. Radical ideas. Make the plan inclusive of the community. You don't have to be a member of New Hopewell to involve yourself, engage yourself, employ yourself, empower yourself through the means of New Hopewell. When the community does better, it's a better chance that the church is going to do better. Create some jobs. Demonstrate renewed love for the community. Demonstrate it. Show the community the love of God reaching out through this body of believers. Keep in mind, as we demonstrate renewed love for community, love is not what you say, it's what you do. Reintroduce the new plan. As we come back into our brick and mortar, reintroduce the new plan. Again, if your church doors have been closed for the last year, year and a half, or for any length of time, what strategic plans do you have as it relates to your comeback? Come back strong. And be sure to include the young people in the community. Give them what many gangs offer them, and that is a sense of belonging. Come back strong. Then assist in establishing new businesses, as we stated earlier, within the community, which will support the ministry of the church. And again, allow the young people to operate. And then build relationships with other community believers. You don't have to be Baptist to go to heaven. Build relationships with other community believers who may not be of your religious persuasion or ethnic background. Remember, it's a kingdom thing. And unless you have been born again, you will not see the kingdom of God. As I close, to be effective in outreach, we, the church, must be able to meet people where they are and not wait for them to come to us. We must come to them. We must go to them where they are. Outreach is where you will put your faith into action. So it is my prayer. It is my prayer that you have gleaned something of benefit from our belief in what the new church, the new Black rule church in particular, must embrace if we are going to be effective, if we are going to be relevant in God's love reaching into the community in which we exist. Our prayer is, you be blessed. God bless you.
Good morning and greetings from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Reverend Kwame Robadiri, and it's my pleasure to join this very special team and consortium of leaders who are preparing to encourage the post-COVID-19 pandemic church. The church has gone through tremendous disruption, indeed, throughout the last 18 months since the whole world was impacted by the COVID and coronavirus pandemic. Here in Nairobi, Kenya, with a church known as Christ is the Answer Ministries, I serve as the head of Christian education and discipleship And one of my key roles ever since 2019 and certainly into 2020 was to help in shaping and creating a good and effective online presence, an online media presence for our church and certainly for the department for which I'm serving at CETAM. CETAM is the acronym for Christ is the Answer Ministries. Well, we had to take all of the changes and all of the impact of the coronavirus pandemic in stride. We were fortunate that we had, we do have a major media presence. The church has owned a radio station since 2003 and a TV station since 2012. And we've been privileged to be able to use this aspect of this leg of the media to present the gospel primarily to Kenya, but of course with opportunities on the internet. We're now able to share messages and to share the gospel around the world. Well, we immediately, of course, latched onto this new opportunity as our churches had to close because of the pandemic and various protocols that our government put in place, that it was necessary not only to close churches, of course, schools closed. Many businesses had to relocate their workers, if not close entirely, during that time. And we saw and we still see and still use media outlets and social media platforms as a way of providing ministry and support. Now, one of the things that, of course, we had to learn, or at least adapt to very, very quickly, was that because we no longer had an in-person congregation, we no longer had people who were on the ground to do ministry, to support the ministry, we had to rely on electronic giving to keep the ministry going and of course, to keep the ministry going specifically on the media, which in itself was an expensive undertaking. So we were fortunate in Kenya to be able to use and to work with a electronic giving platform which was actually created here. It was created and invented in 2007 here in Kenya. It's called M-Pesa. Pesa is the Swahili word for money, and M-Pesa simply means mobile money, mobile pesa. And the idea was created by a local telecommunications company, a phone company, a cell phone company, and cell phone provider. They also provide internet services and of course cellular services across not just Kenya now, but throughout East Africa. Safaricom is in partnership with various other telecom companies around Africa and certainly in Europe as well. They're yet to establish partnerships in the United States, but they are already reaching out into the Middle East. But this mobile money platform, which is very unique and extremely effective, basically turns anyone's phone, it doesn't even have to be a smartphone, anyone's cellular phone into a bank or a banking account. So you register with the cell phone company and your phone number becomes your account number, and you, of course, you have to register with an ID to let people know exactly who you are. But it's a very seamless process and very easy to work with. And you can transact directly with any bank that you have. If you don't have a bank, and this is what is the genius of the system, then you can put money into what we call your M-Pesa account. So this has been extremely effective for low-income people, for people in the rural areas, farmers and small business owners, etc., who don't have bank accounts or who don't have access to bank loans and things of that nature. So you can transact up to $1,400 a day using this particular platform, and you can actually hold twice as much money as that in your account. and transacted for other businesses in the course of the day. So M-Pesa works by allowing the individual to access funding or to receive funding or send funding to any other a phone or any other phone system that is registered to the same company at a small, very small fee, basically cents, pennies on the dollar. And this was the way in which we had encouraged our church membership to give. We started doing this as early as 2015, 2016, encouraging people to take up this system and to give electronically whenever they could. And of course, people were very used to giving cash and giving in kind, which they were still able to do, and we still do receive some in-kind gifts from time to time. But over the last 18 months, over the last 12 months, we have seen all of our electronic giving increase by 80%. 80% of our congregations prefer to give electronically now, and that number is rising. We will soon be in a situation where the vast majority, 90% or so of our congregation and members will be giving electronically. So it's been a tremendous benefit to us to encourage people to support the ministry this way, but also to help people to find an effective and trusted outlet to help others who may be in need. Now, there's nothing like M-Pesa in the United States. There are systems that are coming close to that. People are using Venmo. You can use PayPal. I think another one is a Cash App, where it's possible to connect with your bank account and send a text, and money goes from your account to another account immediately. It's not into a phone system, so it's not as if you're carrying cash around with you on your phone, as the case may be with M-Pesa. Now, that's not to say that the system in America is not as effective, because now a lot of church members have had to learn to give electronically, and finding the convenience of that as a result of the pandemic and the impact that it had on in-person services and giving in person as well. Well, one of the things that we developed as a result of having this platform in Kenya, which we think is a good way to assist others, is that and as I said before, because your phone becomes your bank account, as it were, you can easily send resources directly to somebody's phone, and they can go to a grocery store, they can go to any other shop that has this system available, and it is 100% available across Kenya. You can go to a village corner store and just look for the sign that says M-Pesa, and all it is a question of codes and numbers and amounts, and you make payments, receive money. It's a seamless process. So we were able to assist a number of our church families who were in distress, many of whom had lost income, lost jobs, and so we were able to identify 3,000 individuals, and those individuals also represented families as well, and we were able to send each one $30 every month to assist them just to buy groceries. Now, the other costs that they incurred, whether it was housing, etc., we were not in a position to help everybody with that. But it was good to know that everybody could at least put a meal on the table every day for a month across this entire period. And we did it for 6 months, assisting 3,000 contacts. That was a great deal of resource, but our members who were in a position, especially those who had been giving and were still in jobs, who still had an income, gave very, very generously towards what we called the Bread of Life campaign. And so each Sunday we made an appeal. People would give normally to giving in the church, but also give a little bit extra to support those who are in need. And what this would do is that you would have $30 on your phone to spend directly at a designated grocery store. You're not allowed to spend the money on anything that you had. You considered you couldn't spend the money on alcohol, for example. You couldn't spend the money on a repair for a vehicle or transportation or something like that. It had to go specifically to the needs of groceries in the homes of the people who were there. This resource helped a tremendous number of people, and we were so grateful that we still have it in force. We're still able to make use of it to help others who are in need. After the lockdown, the first lockdown in 2020, and the economy began to sort of come back up again, we had to do another lockdown in the beginning of 2021. But now we're beginning to see signs of the economy beginning to improve, and lockdowns have been lifted, and people slowly returning to work, albeit having to work from home. Another additional thing that we did as a result of this system of electronic giving was to find a way to support pastors. We located 2,000 pastors in 2020 who had lost income because many of them were rural pastors. They entirely depended on giving in their churches, many of them small rural churches, and that's how they survived. Now, these churches had to close because of the lockdowns, and for several months, of course, these pastors had absolutely no income. So we came together with various other urban churches based in Nairobi and said that if we can give each pastor $50 a month, each one of these who have lost, and they'll be identified according to their denomination. They don't necessarily have to be part of our church. They can be part of any Church of Jesus Christ across Kenya, and they have to demonstrate that this is their need and this is the situation they find themselves in. They would receive through this M-Pesa platform the support electronically to see them through a 4-month period. Now, which was helpful because after that 4-month period, most churches reopened. A lot of the churches in the rural areas reopened, and income started to come back in to assist these pastors accordingly. What we're trying to do through plans for the conference is to encourage the churches that are doing better, that are doing well, that are in a position to support others, to look for these electronic platforms to support and to help pastors who may be in need, or just families who are in need. It is my hope that through sharing our example and sharing our experience in what the Lord has done for us in Nairobi, Kenya, we'll be able through the conference to help the U.S. churches look for means and an outlet through the use specifically of electronic giving to support those people who are in need, and just to identify some of those churches, some of those pastors who've really been struggling, and to say to them that there is a way out of this. There are systems that can help you and be a blessing to you. Well, it's been my pleasure to share this experience with you, and I'm looking forward to doing more when the conference comes around. God bless you.
Good evening, and we're grateful to God for this opportunity to be a part of this post-pandemic church conference. We thank God for Pastor Dave, Pastor Daniels, Reverend Newsom, Reverend Fauntleroy, and of course Pastor Rubadiri, and all of those who are taking part and participating in this conference. I'm Pastor Kevin Peterson, Reverend Dr. Kevin M. Peterson, pastor of Second Baptist Church of Fredericktown, New Jersey, and we're grateful here, a son of Second Baptist here in Atlantic City, and we're grateful to be back now and participating in this conference as we're dealing with the church and with the direction the church will go after this pandemic. We are still in the midst of it, and this recurrence of the pandemic and the viruses, the variants coming back, but we still, as the church, we still continue. We thank God that even though the buildings were closed during a period of time during the season, that the church never stopped, and the church will continue to function and operate as God has called it to do. And so through it all, we're grateful to God that He brought us through. And so we're grateful today to be able to share with you as we're dealing with this conference and taking part in this conference from the perspective of the church and its relationship with government, because that area is so broad to deal with, such a broad topic to deal with. We want to kind of more focus in on the church and its relationship with law enforcement. being that law enforcement today is a hot button topic across the nation. And so we want to deal with law enforcement. And we're fortunate on this morning, on this day, to share with us the prosecutor from Salem County. He's been prosecutor for 17 years, 18 years, Prosecutor John Lenahan from Salem County, where our church is that we serve at. And we are so grateful to have him. And in addition to Prosecutor Lenahan, we're grateful to have his Chief of County Detectives, Chief Elliot Hernandez, who's been a great associate and a great friend to us during our time in Pedricktown in Salem County. And now, for those of you who do not know where Salem County is, when I was here in Atlantic City with Pastor Days, I used to think Atlantic County was a stepchild in New Jersey. But now that I'm back here in the woods, boy, I feel like a stepchild. And so we are right by the Delaware Memorial Bridge, that little section of southwest New Jersey, right before you go into Delaware. That is our home, Salem County. And so we're grateful for you, Prosecutor Lenahan, and for you, Chief Hernandez, for sharing this time with us as we talk about church, government, law enforcement specifically, the relationship and how we can improve that relationship or develop that relationship as we go further. And so we just want to have a little bit of time of discussion because Salem County, as we know, our small area here in New Jersey, is really just a microcosm of what we're dealing with across the nation. And some of those issues and things that they're dealing with across the nation are also issues and things that we're dealing with here in Salem County. And so we want to kind of address some of those things and talk about some of those things and how we, as the church, along with law enforcement, can develop partnerships and work together, in what areas we can work together. We've been fortunate to already have worked together before this happened, before the pandemic, even before some of the crises that have happened across the nation, that we were already working together. So we want to kind of talk about some of those things and how we can encourage others to form these partnerships and develop things. So first, you can introduce yourself, you can tell us a little about yourself, and give a little history to those viewing this conference so they know who you are.
My name is John Lenahan. I've been the Salem County prosecutor since 2003. I agree with Pastor Peterson that in many respects we feel that Salem County doesn't get the respect that it deserves in New Jersey. But on the other hand, it's my county and it's our county. I grew up in Salem County. My wife and I graduated from high school together. Our sons graduated. So I feel that in a small county, relationships are very important. And being the smallest county in the state of New Jersey, if I don't know everybody in the county, I know a relative of somebody in their county. And those types of relationships, whether it's with Pastor Peterson, whether it's with a midget football coach or a school superintendent or a school gym teacher, these are our neighbors, our friends. So we can build these relationships, which I think are very important. It was something that the outgoing Attorney General Graywall, emphasized. And he started with a 21-21 program, 21 county, 21st century, where you have to have interactions with communities and community members. But it's something that we've been doing since 2003. And I think, I applaud what Attorney General Graywall tried to push statewide, but I think we were way ahead of the curve. And in deference to my fellow prosecutors, I think in many respects it's easier to do in a smaller county where, people are, when they're your friends, your neighbors, when your kids go to school, when you see them in the Acme, these relationships are really built from there. Our interaction with Pastor Peterson or with other clergy members in the county, I think they have really paid dividends, and we're looking to build upon what we've already established so far. With that, Pastor, I'll turn it over to Chief of Detectives Elliot Hernandez.
Thank you, Pastor, for having me here today. Again, my name is Elliot Hernandez. I was a little bit of background on me. I was born in Puerto Rico, came to Salem County, where my parents were migrant workers, right in Westtown. And then from Westtown, we moved and stayed in Penns Grove. From various locations in Penns Grove, I went through the whole school district in Penns Grove, which is key for me because I cannot forget where I came from. And that's one of the most important things that I say is giving back to the community that you serve. And it's very easy for me to do that with Prosecutor Lenihan at the helm, and encouraging that, and then also having Pastor Peterson there as a good mentor and guide for us whenever we have any issues within our jurisdictions in not just Salem County, but specifically in Penns Grove, where I try to give a lot of time and effort into. So my objective is always to bring our youth up and provide them with guidance. So then, if I can do it, and I show them where I grew up in the different complexes in Penns Grove, if I can do it, you can do it. So I thank you, Pastor, for having me here today.
Thank you, gentlemen. And let me give full disclosure. Even though we're dealing with the law enforcement aspect of government relationship with church, I'm a previous police officer, 25 and a half years, retired captain from Pleasantville Police Department right here outside of Atlantic City. But yet we understand the importance of law enforcement, and now being a pastor, the importance of this relationship between the church and law enforcement. And let me say my predecessor, the Reverend Dr. Edward W. Dorn, who was pastor of Second Baptist Fredericktown for 38 years, he literally handed me over to Prosecutor Lenihan and Chief Hernandez. And he was a social activist, worked hard for social justice and to make sure things were right in Salem County. And indeed, the church is called to be involved with social justice. And so we've been fortunate to walk into this relationship, and we've been received with open arms. But I wanted to make it plain that we don't have a tilt, but we understand the responsibility and the role of law enforcement, having coming from a law enforcement background. But now as the church, we realize that we must work together. And we've been so fortunate to come into a situation that we've been able to work with Prosecutor Lenihan and Chief Hernandez in so many various ways and capacity. Prosecutor, why don't you talk about you talked about the Attorney General's 2021 plan. Why don't you discuss that a little bit about how we functioned with that and what that was all about?
Well, that was something that he came out with right off the bat. When he was appointed in 2018, that was one of his first initiatives. And it was the 21st century, 21 counties, building relationships between communities and law enforcement. And he mandated that on a quarterly basis, the prosecutor's office go out into the public and have a public forum to discuss various subjects, whether it was officer-involved shooting, whether it was the immigration policy, his recent use of force update policy, and then he would send representatives from the Attorney General's office to attend these sessions, and where we got feedback, and then we would get feedback from the Attorney General's office if they felt that the session was productive or if there was things that we should do differently. And with respect to Salem County, it was not a heavy lift. It was something that we had been doing, and it's something that I think that I realized early on the importance of it, because law enforcement can't operate in a vacuum. You have to. We're all in this together, and you have to make the community members understand that their input is important to us, and what we are trying to accomplish, they need to be educated on. So it's a two-way street, and I think it's something that has borne fruit in Salem County through the years, and I think the Attorney General's 2120 policy, by making that mandatory statewide, I think that's really been very productive too. And interesting too, that was 2018, and we all know what happened in 2020 with the events surrounding the George Floyd incident. But the fact that this was in place and and the relationships were in place prior to that, I think that helped New Jersey deal with the tragedy associated with what happened in Minnesota.
Well, and let me say I want to thank you, Prosecutor, because after the Floyd incident, we spoke on the phone. You were quick to say, what can we do? And that was one thing that we wanted to do in Salem County, is to address it, that we wouldn't have an overflow or backlash as a result of that, as it was taking place across the nation. And so we were quick to address those issues and have open lines of communication and really deal with some things. And you addressed that. You stated that Salem County had put some things in place even prior to those policy implementations from the Attorney General. Why don't you discuss some of those things? And one thing is in particular I really like that I want to share with everybody about what you require about your investigators and your people in your office. Where do they all live?
they all live in Salem County, and with very few exceptions, they all grew up in Salem County. They all went to schools in one school or the other in Salem County. Their parents are from Salem County. They have roots in Salem County. They live in Salem County now, and they have ownership of Salem County. They're a part of it. And we mentioned the George Floyd incident, but prior to that was the Ferguson incident, and they talked about the Ferguson effect, where the law enforcement all lived in the suburbs, and then they came into Ferguson, and they were viewed by the citizens of Ferguson as an invasionary force because they came in and then they went out. That doesn't happen in Salem County because the people live in Salem County and they have ownership of Salem County. It's not a job that they come to and then they go home and they live in the suburbs separate and apart from where they're policing. They have a vested interest, and I think that kind of sets Salem County apart from many other places in the United States.
I know we were a municipality, again, disclosure, when I was in the police department, where we had officers, exactly like you said, they would come in, work, but not have relationship. And I think relationship is so important. And on that relationship part, Chief Hernandez, you being from Penns Grove, how has that impacted your ability to do your job?
I tell you what, that definitely helps because, granted, they see the title, they understand the title, but it's not Chief Elliot Hernandez. It's, oh, there's Elliot. Let me go to Elliot because I have a problem with, and you name it. It doesn't matter if it's a barking dog or if there was a homicide. They know me. I grew up there, so they are very comfortable in speaking to me, and that happens throughout the county. So not just where I'm from, but if it happens in another particular area of the county, we have officers and we deploy them to these areas, and the community just know they're not just detectives such and such. It's Pat, it's Fritz, it's they go by first names, which means a lot. Why? Because they'll see them at the local grocery store. They'll see them at the softball fields or at the baseball fields with their kids. So they're invested, and it helps to have a first name and a friend within the police department when there is a problem. They feel more comfortable, which that's what we want to do. We want to make our community feel comfortable with us and willing to talk to us.
That sounds like the importance of relationship. And in the church we talk about relationship with Christ and having that personal relationship. And I do believe also that even translates into the relationship that the church needs to have with law enforcement. Our society is infected today with so much. We know drugs, and now the current day present violence is at an all-time high, and it's impacting nationally, but also even in our area. How can the church help in addressing and dealing with these issues of not only narcotics and drug distribution in our neighborhoods, but also the increase of gun violence that we've been seeing taking place all around the country?
Pastor, the role of the church with respect to gun violence is a difficult question because the individuals who are the gang members or the young people with guns who are shooting each other, those are individuals that I do not think are in your church on Sunday morning. But the parishioners in your church who you are touching in many respects are related to those who are using these guns. And I think that the message that you send to them hopefully can be transmitted to the young people who are involved in this. The other aspect that chaplains, there's a chaplains program. The role that you play, unfortunately, when there's sometimes funeral services associated with it, is very important. But it's a difficult issue to address, and what I see is young people between the ages of 17 and 25, and there's a whole science about when your brain is fully developed, and there's this machismo associated with some people in carrying a gun, and it's a difficult subject, it's a difficult problem that we're grasping with And interestingly enough, Chief Hernandez and I had a meeting with the Attorney General yesterday, and he's grasping with it as well. And one of the issues is guns being transported from other states into the state of New Jersey, because as you know, New Jersey has very strict gun laws, but they're being guns are coming in from other states, and it's a problem that we're wrestling with. I think the fact that we have a relationship with clergy members throughout the state, throughout Salem County, can help us get our message out, but to address the actual gang members is something that we're struggling with.
And true, they're probably not the ones in our sanctuary on Sunday morning. But one big issue, even relations to gun violence and drugs, has been the inability to communicate information. And I think if nothing else, as you mentioned, those who may have family members or know people in the neighborhoods or communities. But as we know, there's a culture of no snitching, not saying anything. After the tragedies of national tragedies, and bombs and explosions, see something, say something, that pretty much didn't work because of repercussions that people often face. We try to, in our relationship with law enforcement, be a conduit to share good information, at least intelligence or information that can be received. But how important is it just little bits of information received by law enforcement from community members, Chief, to help investigations in various aspects?
It's crucial. It's crucial for us to have the community, just give us any bit of information because it can lead us into the right direction. You live there, you understand it. We're coming there on the tail end of it where something already happened. So when individuals come to us and say, I saw, even if it's the smallest thing, it leads us, it's one piece of that puzzle. So it leads us into the right direction. So then hopefully we can solve this crime as quick as possible before that individual can do it somewhere else or to another family. So it's vital. I can't tell you how vital it is for the community to feel comfortable with us, to understand that we're here to help, and we're going to do whatever we can to protect you and the community that you live in by taking this individual who has caused this harm to you and the family that lives within that community.
And Pastor, if I can piggyback on that, when I first started, oftentimes there would be a homicide, there'd be a tragic incident, and people would step forward and they would come to the police, and they would give a statement and they say, I witnessed this, I witnessed that. Despite the no snitch rule. But what's taken one step beyond the no snitch rule is if somebody gives a statement and that goes out in discovery, and the individuals who are the defendants in this case understand that an individual is going to testify against them in court, the people who have stepped forward are now fearful for their lives and for their family members' lives. So, understandably, there are less and less people inclined to give a formal statement, to be willing to testify in court. But by, as Elliot said, having relationships with people, what we find now is someone will come forward and say, I will give you this information off the record. I'm not willing to put myself or my family in fear of losing our lives, but I will tell you what happened. So it gives us we understand who did it, and then oftentimes we have the ability to circumstantially prove the case against that individual. So that is invaluable, and I respect people's right not to come forward. I understand that, but they if you have a relationship with them, they can still provide valuable help, and that's kind of where we are in this day and age. And the relationships are key.
Prosecutor, you were reading my mind, because that was going to be my next question in regards to information being shared without a person's name and information being attached to an official document and official report. So those things during discovery would not be discovered. So you indeed were thinking ahead of me, but you were right on point indeed. In relation to talking about that connection as we discussed, what is it, or what are other avenues or things that we can do in the community together to try to bring some cooperation or interaction between the community and law enforcement. Because we've been dealing with so many, we're in an era now, that everything is negative for law enforcement. There are several different avenues, and law enforcement is necessary. We need law enforcement. And I, again, coming from a law enforcement background, I know that. But the law, the Bible teaches, even for the lawless. But it's not for those who understand that we need law enforcement. Can we talk about accountability? Because there are also needs in law enforcement. We talk about the need of law enforcement. There also needs to be accountability in law enforcement. So when we talk about accountability and responsibility a little bit.
I think we've come a long way with respect to accountability. We had this conversation yesterday with the Attorney General. Salem County oftentimes is perceived to be the stepchild of, or the afterthought, or we're the southernmost county in the state. So maybe in some respects, we're considered backward compared to Bergen County or Essex County. But the fact of the matter is that we've been ahead of the curve in many of these things. Salem County was the first county to have motor vehicle recorders in every patrol car. First county to have body-worn cameras that every patrol officer had. And that's accountability. And I've had the president of the NAACP come to me with complaints that they've received from somebody about mistreatment on the part of police officers. And we've gone to the police station and viewed the body-worn camera. And the information that was told to the president of the NAACP wasn't represented on what happened in the video. So the video, in many respects, one, it holds police officers accountable, but two, it makes the community understand what actually transpired. Now, it's not always perfect, and we know when we watch the news, which seems to be every morning, of police misconduct, but when that police misconduct occurs, the officers and the chiefs of police and the county prosecutors, they are taking steps to correct that. So I think we've come a long way. We have a longer way to go. And we have to, unfortunately, law enforcement finds itself in a position where they have to earn back the trust of the citizenry. And we're doing that. And we're doing that with the videos, and we're doing it with the connections with the community.
Yeah, I want to add on that as well. Being transparent, and we have to show. We have policy, we have procedure. We hold our officers accountable if they do, X, Y, or Z. But we also have to understand that we're human beings, and we don't wear a badge every day. And this is where I think we have to take our own ownership and be invested. Be coaches. Go out there and be seen. So you're now being transparent, not just when you're in uniform where you feel as though everyone's watching you, because you're always being watched. Just do the right thing. So when you're out there coaching and you're showing, the community that, yep, I wear a badge, I wear this uniform, and I have to do my job, but I also have a family, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show the community that I'm invested. I'm invested here, and now I'm going to, have my kids playing the sports within the same community that you are when I see you on a certain street, and I'm trying to ask you questions. So yeah, we're following policy, we're following procedure, but we're part of the community and we're following the same rules that you are.
Chief, that element of personal investment is so central. You guys come out to just about everything we have at the center, at the church, and you don't just show up when something takes place. I think that's crucial for law enforcement, and even at law enforcement's call for the church to be involved. I think the church needs to step up and be active participants in whatever the situation is going on too in the community. But you guys have taken the role of being there, and not just in uniform, not just on. Again, during my years of law enforcement, there were times when you could only get guys to activities if you paid them. We know you guys are there while you're working, but you're also there when you're not on the clock. And we think we appreciate that, and we know that it makes a difference, because now people get to see you, as you said. You're people. You have families. You have children. You have wives. The female officers have husbands, and you have relationships that you want to go back home to as well. And I think it's so important that the community sees law enforcement as people also, and that law enforcement sees the community as people. That this us versus wall us versus them wall is destroyed, because I think that has been a part of the problem which has existed for so long in the law enforcement community relationship. There was one thing I did want to pick up on again. However, if my mind serves me correctly, it was an issue that we talked about a little bit earlier, but I think it is just so vitally important when we talk about really needing one another and depending on one another. Because if we operate as two different entities with no interaction, all we really do is increase that wall of separation. This again, prosecutor, tell us how important it is for the community. And again, we know you're not speaking for every department. We know within the county, you're the chief law enforcement officer in the county. But every city or community that has a law enforcement agency has their own chief of police, and they have their own procedures. But when we're talking about individuals not feeling as though they're being heard, could you just share with the community the process that they can go through to hear a voice or to be heard in their voice?
Well, in this day and age of social media and mass communication, we have a Facebook page, a website. People contact us all the time through our Facebook page. People can call. If people feel that they've been treated unjustly, they have the opportunity to file internal affairs complaints. So I think we go out of our way to make the general public understand that they have rights. That it's not just the law enforcement do what we say. If they feel that they're not treated properly, they have avenues to have that addressed. But separate and apart from that, the relationships there are people, and I know as you as a leader in your church and in the community, people will feel comfortable oftentimes going to you, and then you have to feel comfortable going to me. And going back to the George Floyd incident, I remember that like it was yesterday. The news just broke. I was unaware of it, and the way I was made aware of it was from a phone call from you on a Monday morning saying, this is a tragic incident. This is not going to be another police encounter with the community. This is going to have widespread ramifications. You said that, and it didn't really catch fire for another 5 or 6 days later, and then it took off across the United States. But you predicted that, and you made me aware of it. And so that's just the fact that you were comfortable picking up the phone and calling me, and the fact that there are other people in the county who have no qualms about calling me up and saying, hey, look, there's something, this isn't necessarily right. This needs to be addressed. And I think that helps build confidence that, I'm not going to say, well, don't bother me. That's not my problem. It is my problem. And the fact that it's being conveyed to me at an early stage allows me to address it before it becomes even a bigger problem. So hopefully that answered your question. But it's just something that I wanted to make sure that I covered. And then that you were very prescient with that George Floyd, and you were the first person to contact me about that.
A lot of things that you have done, sir, Pastor, in regards to having the church see us in a different light outside of our norm, which is, having meetings at your church where members of your congregation are there, and they're there and able to ask questions of us. So you bring us to them and let us answer any questions that they may have on various nights of the week to make sure that any members, not just of your congregation, but of the community itself, can come and ask any questions that they may have of law enforcement so we can answer it. We also have walks, community walks, where we go to various towns throughout the county, and we walk in the neighborhood, and we knock on doors, and the individuals are able to walk with us, talk with us, pick our brains. We can pick their brains, most importantly, on what's going on in their neighborhood. What are we not seeing? One of the things that came to us was, wish we could see law enforcement either walking around in our neighborhoods a little bit more, or they used to have a bike patrol. they sent it to me. It sat in my brain. Spoke with the prosecutor, which is great to have a prosecutor like this. And I said, I want to send a couple guys to training to get a bike patrol out. We have a couple guys. They went out, got trained, and now we're going to have a bike patrol where you want to see a more presence in the neighborhood, not just a car driving by, but a contact. So that's what we're doing. So there's community walks. There's community events where the public comes in and you make them facilitate that. You know, we also go and speak in front of different homes where they have the high schools, and they say, look, you know, this is the topic that's going on right now. We see it, and this could be a problem. We go and speak to them and try to educate them and lead them in the right direction. Rope, again, something that you know, you instill in us, which is the reaching out in plain English. That's between the 4th and 8th grade. Again, we're trying to touch the kids that are before high school so they understand that we're not the bad guys, this is what it is, and trying to lead them in the right direction. So, again, kudos to you, sir.
So thank you so much.
And Pastor, if I could just one piggyback on that too. Shortly after your arrival, one thing that you spearheaded was going to the schools, speaking in school classrooms with clergy members and law enforcement. And I think that's been very valuable. Yourself, Bishop Washington from Penns Grove, various members of law enforcement, and the fact that our law enforcement are local people, I think is important too, because you go to a 6th or 7th grade class and you speak to the students, and then the officers there can say, you know, I sat in this class here 15 years ago, and I had Mrs. Jones as my teacher, the same teacher that you have. And you know, I graduated from this school, and then I went into law enforcement. That's something that you could consider if you want to. I think it really resonates with young people, and that was your vision, and we've continued to do it since you've been here.
Yeah, we so greatly appreciate it, and they just called us again for us to go in a couple of weeks, but unfortunately myself and Chief are not available, but we're sending representatives. We have other clergy and other law enforcement officials going. And listen, we wanted to deal with church-government relationship, but it was so broad. And so with our background in law enforcement, we thought to make it smaller and really dealing with the law enforcement, since there was so much happening with law enforcement today. And we're so grateful for Prosecutor Linehan and Chief Hernandez taking their time out to come share and just talk about some issues about building and improving and maintaining relationships, because it's necessary that we work together. We all want the same thing, and oftentimes we all want the same things but are taking different methods to get there. And so it's so important that we come together and try to see how can we get to that same goal and going in the same direction, working together instead of working apart. And so, gentlemen, we are so grateful for you taking the time out to come down. We just heard a siren that reminds us we're not in Salem County, we're in Atlantic City. But no, you know I love you, Atlantic City. We don't get that out, we got cornfields and everything, but we're so grateful for you both taking your time out to come share with us and share really not only with us here in Salem County and Atlantic County, but this is a conference that we're doing across the country, and even we have Pastor Rubaderi, who's in Africa, who's taking part. And so this broadcast is going to go out throughout the world. But we're putting Salem County on the map now. We may be forgotten about here in New Jersey, but they're going to know about Salem County and the great work that you and your office and your officers are doing in Salem County in developing these relationships. And let me say, as we talked about government, church-government relationship, one great thing is about huge areas about policy making. And again, that's not in the law enforcement area, but policy making is so important. And we urge everyone to register to vote and then vote, because the people that you put into office who make the policies have a direct impact upon law enforcement and those and how they serve and how they perform their duties. So it is so important when we talk about, again, about church-government relations. Policy is such an important part, and we have to be active participants, and we have to register to vote, and we have to vote. We cannot emphasize that enough. But in dealing with this part of our relationships and developing and building relationships with law enforcement, we again say thank you to Prosecutor Linehan, thank you to Chief Hernandez, And we thank you, Pastor Days, for facilitating this opportunity for us to come and share. We thank you, Pastor Daniels, for your vision in developing this conference, even down there from South Carolina. And to all of you, clergy involved, we thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And we just thank God that He's placed us in this place at this time, in this season, to do the work for His kingdom. God bless you all. Good night.
Thank you.